Okay, have you seen this item? If your answer was no, you need to keep watching because this is a must-have tool. And if your answer was yes, you also need to keep watching because I don't just use this for its intended purpose. I have some hacks with this tool and you need it in your toolkit. Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this video, I'm gonna show you this underrated tool that I always have in my pencil case. It's called an eraser shield. Okay, so I know about this tool because of my background. In university, I had to do a lot of hand drafting for floor plans, and if you know anything about doing that kind of stuff, it has to be very precise and it's all done in pencil. And you don't want any smudges, you don't want any weird extra pencil lines because when you photocopy it, it doesn't work properly. So that's where this tool came in handy, and I think it was actually originally invented for hand draftsmen, draftswomen. But this is used for so many different ways now in my everyday art life, and it's always in my pencil case. So the first way I'll demonstrate this is if we're talking about drafting. What I would have used to use this for is, let's say I was drafting and I drew a square. This is more like a rectangle, but okay. Let's say I drew a very imperfect rectangle square like this. And this spot is easy enough to erase, right? Like I can just erase that, no problem. But what about these little tiny overlaps in the corners where if I was to do this and try and erase that one little spot, it ends up erasing way more than I mean to because I have this big gross eraser. You can get smaller erasers, but even then they're not super precise. So that's what this erasing shield is for. So you would take this and you'd pick the shape that makes the most sense. So let's say I wanted to use this little square. I could put that in this corner and block off exactly what I want to erase. Then I can just erase that one exact spot. And when I move my eraser or my shield away, that corner is perfect. So same thing. And you can even just use the edge of it and line it up. So I only want to get that little tiny notch. You can just erase it. No problem. So that's a really, really simple example, but that's how it is intended to be used. But how else do I use it in my calligraphy and lettering work? It's one of those tools that you can use it in so many different ways, and that's why I always keep it with me because it's such a tiny little thing. And every time I think like, oh, how can I do this precisely, or how can I do this in an easier way? This is always the tool that keeps coming back. I keep coming back to. But let me demonstrate a few of the ways that I have used it and that I've thought of using it for in the past. So let's say I wanted to draw like a really basic serif letter A. Okay, so let's say I doodled this letter A and then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, it looks pretty good, but this side, my line is like it's not very even, and I don't want to just add to it because then it's going to get too thick. I actually just want to like remove this bump sort of thing that I had on it. Guess what I would use? My eraser shield. So I'm gonna take this line here in the middle because it's about the width that I want, and I'm gonna line it up perfectly, just showing the part I want to erase. And then I'm gonna erase within that line, and it's perfectly straight. There's a little bit more here that I sort of missed, so I'm just gonna line that up one more time. Making sure to shield anything I don't want to erase. And there we go. Now I have a perfectly straight line. The next thing I often like to do with my lettering is I use these as like little embellishments. So let's say out of this side of the A, I wanted to carve out some dots. You'll often see people do this on drop caps and pretty serif letters and stuff. So I'm gonna line up these dots and I'm gonna erase. Look at those perfectly spaced, perfectly erased dots out of the middle of my A. If I were to do that with an eraser, it would look like crap. Or how about if I accidentally smudged something, but I don't want to have to like erase in the little tiny bits of that letter, I would take my erasing shield, line it up where there's any weird smudges, go right up against the letter and get rid of all the imperfections. Working around this, and there's some really precise shapes, like this one gets tapered into the edge, so you can use that right into the corner of a letter. And I've erased all along that side of the letter, and now I can go farther out and get rid of all this stuff around the edge. and it's cleaned up. I've also used this in instances where I'm writing out a really long calligraphy quote for somebody or vows or something, and I'm doing it all in pencil first, and it's really kind of tiny lettering. And if I screw up a letter, I don't want to have to go back and erase the whole word or accidentally erase the letters beside it. So I'll use my eraser shield and just really precisely erase out what I don't want. Now, obviously this is all done in pencil, so if you're doing your lettering in ink, you can't use the eraser shield to erase things. But what you can do is do it all in pencil first, so that when you come back to do this in ink, it's much more precise. So if I was to go over this in ink now, I can go around that perfect little circle, and it's still gonna look a lot more perfect than it would have if I had just freehanded those. Another way I use this is actually just as a stencil or a ruler. So in my bullet journal, for example, I might use these lines to create really perfect borders or really perfect underlines. If I had a word, I just traced on either side of those lines and made the most perfect little double underline. You can do the same thing with this bigger line. A little bit more of a space there. Or you could do this row of circles as a border in your bullet journal. Just trace them over. Right? Like you can use all of the different shapes on this eraser shield to make little embellishments in your journal, in your planners and stuff like that, or just literally on your art compositions, your lettering compositions. And then lastly, of course, I could use this as a ruler. It has a straight edge, it's made of metal, it's really great as a ruler. And the other thing that I discovered with this is that I can actually use it to create guidelines too on a whim. So I noticed that this line, if I go to the top of this line and the top of this line, and then I go to the top of this bottom one, those guidelines are spaced properly. So I can actually use that to make myself guidelines on a whim if I need to do something in calligraphy. So how's that for a multi-purpose tool? I use it for erasing, I use it as a ruler, I use it as a stencil, and I use it to make guidelines. And the best part is it's only a couple bucks. And it's the tiniest little thing that you can just squeeze right into any pencil case, and it's not gonna take up a lot of room. Seriously, I'm gonna link to this down below for you guys, because this is like you know those knives that have a million little things in them it's like a multi-purpose tool? What's it called? Swiss Army knife. This is like a Swiss Army knife, but for artists. So that's it about that. But before you go, I would love for you to tell me down in the comments below, is there something in your lettering kit that you absolutely must have in there at all times? Seriously, I'm genuinely curious, because I feel like there are definitely other little known tools like this out there that I want to know about. All right, that's it for now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I put out 2 new videos like this every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.